hoax, right?
It could be that, or it could be that we're being played on many sides right now. I challenge everybody, and Mr. Martinez knows that I remain skeptical as well of anything that he's announced. I've told him so in emails. Mr. Wilcock, I don't have access to. He doesn't take my emails because I'm too small a fish for him. Ditto Project Camelot and Richard Hoagland as well. However, they're aware of what we do. They're very aware because these are people that watch the media. They watch the comments. They watch the forums. So they know what's going on, and they know they've been challenged. Their response to date has largely been silence and stonewalling.
Randy, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, let's move on to a couple other stories and see how they are also using maybe similar techniques and raising the question of where are we going with all of this? This is Revelations. We'll be right back. This is Revelations. We're continuing with Randy Maugans. Randy's Off-Planet Radio podcast can be heard on exotica-radio.com. Randy, a story that has fascinated me is the story of David Basiago. He tells that as a young man in the early 80s, President Obama was part of a secret CIA project to explore Mars. The future president teleported there along with the future head of DARPA. That's the assertion, at least, of Mr. Basiago and another gentleman named Mr. William Stillings, who say that they once served as chrononauts at DARPA's behest, and they traveled time and space, including going to Mars, and that a youthful Barack Obama was one of them. Well, Wired magazine picks up the story, and they got the White House to deny it. Guess what? This is now offered as proof that the story is truth. We all know that there's truth in denial, right? What's your take on this story?
I wasn't aware of the second part of that. I'm very familiar with Andy Basiago, and I've invited him to come on. We've not been able to connect. On one level, he's kind of credible. On another level, what the story he tells is very incredible, and connecting Barack Obama to it, you know, here's where this whole media thing falls apart, because we deal in a media area where facts and hard evidence are pretty much not in the offering. And in fact, if you go back again to the modus operandi of somebody like Project Camelot, they will tell you point blank that there's no evidence that they can even offer for many of their whistleblowers and witnesses. And I would take that and say, yes, that's probably true, because I interview people who are alien abductee victims, people who have been in the projects, the black projects, MK Ultra related type projects going back to the 1960s. At some point, there has to be a ring of truth, and there does need to be some evidence presented in order to give a credible story. So we have, again, the same suspension of disbelief that comes into play in a fiction. So we have to assume that on one level there's theater being played out here, and that the purpose is to grind us down to the point where we're willing to accept whatever premises a particular person offers us.
I've recently become aware of what I refer to as the ascension deception. Some people have been telling me that there are some authors out there that, well, David Icke is one of them, that is saying essentially, the story, as close as I can get it, is that the moon is an artificial spaceship inhabited by reptilians, and that negative ETs came to Earth and posed as our gods and gave humanity cleverly deceptive love and light teaching. So if you are following the path of ascension, which a lot of people are right now, what they're trying to convince you is that you are actually playing into some kind of a reptilian-type trap here, that if you follow the love and light path, that is in fact going to lead you to these false gods. Where do we go with something like that?
I see this in the Christian realm as well. I saw it for years with the story of the pre-tribulation rapture, the idea the very old stories of the Nephilim, what we would call the Anunnaki. How do we pin any of this to a reality? The love and light crowd, and I call them love and lighters, I don't have a problem with the concept of that. I don't have a problem with the concept of ascension. My personal belief in this is that ascension is something we seek individually as a result of higher spiritual pursuits. that it is not a group consciousness. The Earth is going through changes right now. There are energetics in play, and we would all, I think, agree with that. But ascension is not a group mass thing. It is a highly individual course of spiritual development that each person has to seek and choose for themselves.
And so, are you doing any extrapolating here? Are you looking out at this scene out here and saying, well, wait a minute, there seems to be almost, I don't want to use the word a dividing line that is being played here, but suddenly, I mean, there does seem to be this thought form that's out there, whether it's being created as a theater by certain elements or whether it's an intentional mind control type of a thing, that seems to me to try to divide this arena. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, there's a division aspect to it, but more than anything else, what it really is, there are people who have set themselves up as leaders. And the reason they've done this is for the very thing that you mentioned very early here, the Oral Roberts effect. Why would Oral Roberts do that? If the world's going to end, if God's going to kill you, what do you care if you have $1 million for? If we're going to all ascend, why does David Wilcock need a bestseller in the New York Times? Why do they need finances to continue large-scale operations of publishing and media at Project Camelot? Why does Richard Hoagland need to harvest millions of viewers to his website and sell DVDs and books and all sorts of other things? I would say to all of the people following these leaders, take a look at the premises. If we're really where you think we're at in terms of human consciousness and the state of the planet right now, we need to be putting out good, solid information and working together with each other and not attempting to make money at this. Mm-hmm. And I say that not being against people financing their operations or selling books. I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is the level of drama that's being constantly played in these particular medias and forums. What's offered as evidence is not evidence. What's offered is opinion and rehashed old information, much of it very old information, much of it information that's been harvested from other sources at other times. I mean, David Wilcock's book is not new. It is simply an amalgamation of a lot of information brought together between two covers. Is he a good writer? Probably. He's very good at putting information together, but there's nothing original about his thesis.
Well, I mean, I agree, and I am one of the original researchers. I mean, he scanned my Freedom's Gate book and just put it wholesale into his video presentation with the slimmest of possible of attribution and then literally butchered the results, which is just one reason why I have a personal interest in seeing how, you know, something has to sort of change in this genre, because you do have people that are passing themselves off as authorities using other people's material, in this case me, with full knowledge. I have to believe that he was absolutely twisting my words and my conclusions, and that, you know, maybe people can say, well, William Henry's got an axe to grind here, and in a way I suppose I do, and I have talked with David about it and got him to fess up on a couple other instances of misuse of material as well. But my interest in it is to say I'm just concerned about the whole genre in general, that if a few of these boats sink, that it could really sink by misbehavior, by people saying, oh, this whole business is absolutely full of it, then everybody suffers. And it just seems to me like, yeah, this is a time when we want to be focused on as solid of information as possible, and you want to look to people and say, yes, they are in fact behaving quite credibly, when in fact, as you're suggesting here, there are some gaping holes in what's being presented.
Everybody presently consciously alive on this planet at this time has the ability to dig and learn truth for themselves. We all have, I guess, what you would call a higher self, a Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call that. And if you exercise discernment, you will do what I've done. I simply looked at what has been offered and said, you know, there's something wrong with this. There are details here that are lacking. There are attitudes exhibited by these people that are not in line with what you would call a spiritual leader. Having a hissy fit on radio, breaking down and crying, and complaining about the fact that somebody has basically threatened your life is not the hallmark of a heroic investigator. Anybody
will
that
be fine unless I get, and I'll be fine if I get 200,000 people to come to my website. I mean, it's outrageous.
Yeah, this is the part where it's a payoff. And the fact that it's allowed, that it's entertained, that it's not called, that nobody says, hey, there are things wrong with this. Well, we've done that. You've done it. I've done it. Some of the people I work with have done it. And we've been treated to a fair amount of contempt by those inside the camp. And unfortunately, those are the people that needed to hear this the most.
Well, should this genre be relabeled as tabloid entertainment?
Well, I think that's up to each individual person. I think that the universe will allow you to be deceived if you wish to be deceived. If you enjoy your illusions, they will be given to you. That's actually in even the Christian Bible, that it says that God will send a strong delusion, that they will believe a lie. If you choose to believe lies, if you make lies your refuge, then you can live in those lies and reap the harvest. I would prefer that people would look at truth from a very, very circumspect manner and take to heart the fact that the behavior of the people who are serving this information out needs to be placed under scrutiny and accountability.
Mm-hmm. One of the other stories that you're working on is the global currency update. That one seems to have some troubling elements to me, too, because there is no such thing as a free lunch, but that seems to be what's often being offered here, is that if you adopt this scenario, then all your debts are going to be removed and there's going to be a new currency come in and this sort of thing. What's going on in that genre? Because it's bound to be a big story here in 2012.
Well, you know, from the Wilcock side of it, I would say I don't understand what a $1 trillion lawsuit issued by a White Dragon Society has to do with my pocketbook today. Frankly, I read the lawsuit. I see nothing there that works for me on an individual level. Even if they realign the currency on a global level, what does that mean to the average person? And more importantly, who gets to control it and who's calling the shots? We have a phony monetary system here in the United States, and we have a monetary system that has been horrible in terms of what it's reaped in terms of wars, in terms of pollution, in terms of raping the earth, and in terms of the collateral to the human soul because of this focus on money and finances. Nobody is addressing the moral implications of this. Everybody's looking to get themselves out of debt because basically at this point the banks seem to control us all. I don't see any answers and any solutions so far, and I'm hoping that somebody will, you know, sooner or later come up with some answers that would address my concerns about this. I think the idea of a global monetary system smacks of some things that are, well, they're extremely dark.
How so?
In terms of the fact that I believe that it would lead to a global dictatorship, a part of which we have now, and the fact that once that money is centrally controlled globally, you have to institute another system that removes the hard value asset, what little we have now of money, meaning a fully digital system, which means, again, there's no accountability in terms of finances. And nearly everybody that I've talked to who works in the world of finance agrees at the present time it is not possible to even account for the money system, that we are being basically stolen from daily via computers, via the electronic environment that we live in now. There's nothing that would address that in any of the solutions that I've seen so far.
Randy, we've just got a couple of moments left. What are some stories you're working on now or will be following?
I'm following basically the same line that I've been going vis-a-vis Project Camelot, David Wilcock, Richard Hoagland, and some other things. I expect that by the weekend we'll release an article that's going to raise a few eyebrows because I've found some very strong linkages to some old black ops projects going back to the 1960s that were mind control projects that actually link to something called then Project Camelot. And I have to say that I find it kind of compelling that the strategy then appears to be the very strategy that we've just talked about for the last 30 minutes.
Well, I've spoken with David Wilcock on the program, Richard Hoagland on the program, as well as Carrie Cassidy in the past, and would certainly welcome them to come back anytime and talk about some of the points you've raised here. And I hope that you'll continue your watchdog work. It just seems like there needs to be people like